Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where Karens truly believe that everyone is meant to serve them. And in this episode, guys, oh boy, we've got Karens calling 911 on customers refusing to obey them, Karens messing with army cadets, OP tells a story about the time she was attacked in a store. It's absolutely wild. I hope you enjoy the stories, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So this happened a while back. At the time, I was a third-year apprentice chef going for a job interview, and they told me to arrive in my chef uniform as the interview is also an audition that you have to make a dish they ask for. So I did everything and was told we will call you. Still in my chef uniform, I was hungry, so I thought, why not? I'll place an order and stay and eat. While I was waiting for food, I noticed a table of ladies watching me, but they didn't say anything at all. So my food arrives, and I was scoffing it down as I have to go back to my job soon. That's when I notice someone standing right next to me with a plate of food in their hands, looking at me. I just say hi and continued to keep eating. They got my attention again and started to look upset with me, which I have no idea why. And that's when one lady, a Karen, says to me, "Look, I ordered a well-done steak. Does this look well done to you? It's red." They asked me to look at their plate and continued complaining. I wanted to laugh, but I didn't. Thinking she was asking for my opinion, I said, "No, it looks medium well. You should probably have it sent back to have it done to your liking." I said that not caring, as I wanted to finish so I can get back to work. And that's when she said, "Damn right I should have it sent back. Nobody can do anything right." She then slams the plate in front of me. Food went flying everywhere. Luckily for her, nothing landed on my plate, and she said, "Instead of enjoying your food, maybe you should cook the way your paying customers had asked for." The woman snapped, and I look at her in shock and say, "What? You think I work here, love? Sorry, I don't. I'm just having lunch and then I'm gone. Maybe ask that person for help," pointing to an actual employee. The lady looked pissed and said, "No, you're a chef. You got the clothes on. You can eat later. Go back to that kitchen and cook my food the way I asked and paid for." I then rolled my eyes as I've had enough of her yelling at me. I say to her, "Listen here, lady. I was here for a job interview and I was told to wear my uniform, which I am. I did not cook that steak for you. And as you know, I do not work here. So please go talk to the front of the house. They can actually help you as I do not work here." Now I just snapped because if you looked at my chef jacket, it had the bright pink word sugar on it, which was the name of the cafe I worked at, along with pink buttons and pink and white checkered chef pants. This place is a high-end restaurant, with black jackets with white or black buttons and gray small checkered chef pants. The head chef wore all white. I was shocked that she went to continue on yelling at me, and that's when I noticed the head chef walking over and asked what was going on. And she turns to him and says, "Your young staff member here is refusing to recook my steak." The head chef then smiled at me and then at her and said, "Maybe because she doesn't work here. But please, bring your plate with me and tell me what's wrong with it." Karen looked at him in shock and said, "She doesn't work here?" I just smile at her and say, "Like I said, I do not work here right now." I then finish off the last bite, walking off, leaving her stunned. I ended up working at that place, and it turns out she's always complaining about her food. Guys, I don't know, like in my opinion, regardless if that Karen's a regular or not, or even if she spends a lot of money or not, I think if I were the owner, I'd be banning her from that place. Like harassing employees, being that demanding, like a total nightmare customer. Yeah, again, if I were the owner, guys, I would tell that lady, "Yeah, I don't think I want you here anymore." So here's some background. At the time of the incident, I was 14 years old, and I was a member of the Army Cadets here in the UK. I was traveling back from a weekend camp with a group of about 35 cadets and 6 adults. On this particular camp, I had completed a 48-hour fieldcraft exercise, including mock attacks, creating a camp, setting and defending from ambushes, and a 9-ish mile hike. Out of the previous 72 hours, I had slept for maybe 3, and I consumed so much caffeine at one point that I could hear my eyeballs moving. So while on the coach home, we stopped at some services for food and a toilet break. And here is an important note. I was dressed in full cadet uniform, which was camouflage combats, a smock, and shiny black boots, complete with rank slide and beret. So here's the story. There I was, picture an exhausted teenager, standing with my friend in front of the pricing board for the McDonald's in the service station, just trying to marshal my brain to do the math, to work out how much what I wanted was going to cost. I was surrounded by people dressed the same as me, in a similar state of exhaustion. I can vaguely hear someone complaining about all these people, in the strident and petulant tones of a wild Karen. And that's when I feel a hand grab my shoulder and wrench me around. It's Karen, and she screams at me, "I want 2 Big Mac meals with chocolate shakes and a chicken nugget Happy Meal with milk." I say to her, what? I then realize that I might be blocking her way of seeing the menu, so I mumble an apology and went back to counting my money. The Karen then grabs me again, and this time, she shouts at me saying, "Are you stupid? I said I want 2 Big Mac meals with chocolate shakes and a chicken nugget Happy Meal with milk." I just stare at her blankly, and I say to her, I'm not stupid. I do not work here. The Karen says to me, "I don't care. You're next in line. You order my food for me, or you let me go in front of you. I don't have time to wait for all you army brats to order." Now at this point, I kind of lose it, and I say, "Miss, I don't know who the F you think you're talking to, but you don't get to order me around. I've had an exhausting weekend, and I'm going to get my food. My food only, and if you touch me again, I will defend myself, understood?" Of course, all the shouting attracts the attention of Wendy, the most senior cadet coach and the most aggressive person that I've ever met. Wendy marches over to us and says, "OP, what's going on here?" I say to her, "I don't know." I then point to Karen and say, "This woman just grabbed me and she yelled at me to take her order, so I yelled back, 'I just want my food.'" Wendy then nodded and she gestures towards the ordering counter. Wendy then tells her, "Ma'am, I'm gonna have to ask you to step away from my cadets." Wendy then places herself between me and the Karen. The Karen now loses her mind and she goes into a screaming fit, yelling about disrespect and duty. Wendy, not to be outdone, begins shouting back how Karen should respect the cadets, and at this point enter the staff sergeant, who shouts loud enough that I could feel it through the floor. Staff sergeant says, "Enough. Sergeant Wendy, go order your food, now." He then wheels around to Karen, who is shocked into silence, and he says, "As for you, I suggest you wait elsewhere until we're all gone. Do not harass my cadets. Got it?" Karen stammers and says, but I'm... Staff sergeant interrupts her and says, "I saw everything. Now leave." And with that, Karen scurries off, and that's the end of it. Staff sergeant and Wendy both checked if I was okay, and then they left me to my meal. Guys, I absolutely love it when Karens get put in their place, especially when it's an army sergeant doing it. And seriously, reading this post, I could definitely hear the staff sergeant's booming voice, and I'm not surprised Karen ran for the hills after being yelled at, because honestly, I would too. I just hope she learns her lesson after this. So here's a bit about me. For several years, I worked for a local railroad on the East Coast. The industrial railroad section I operated served a rather large port, along with a handful of smaller building materials companies, including a couple of those big box types, like the Big Blue and Big Orange stores. About once a week, I was tasked with putting a carload or 2 or sometimes 3 of lumber and various large building materials in a siding that ran up to a dock behind one of the 2 big box stores and alongside the parking lot. And since we operated with a remote control operation system, I would often find myself standing in odd places, watching the movement of the train while I got things positioned and whatnot. My uniform is key to the story. I was wearing battered blue jeans, steel-toed boots, a long-sleeve shirt, hard hat, sunglasses, and most importantly of all, a bright reflective vest, which I wore over the shirt. Oh, and the belt pack, which had all the controls for the train slung over my chest, hanging at the belt area. So I looked nothing like the usual employee of this particular orange store. On one hot summer day, I found myself fighting with a car whose pins simply refused to drop. It got stuck up, and no amount of shaking it or cursing it was going to change that. And so, being the intrepid sort, I decided that some percussive maintenance was in order. I decided that I was going to beat the snot out of the thing, that I would teach it a lesson. So heading into the store, I made my way to the hardware area to find the heaviest small sledgehammer I could. And that's where the stupidity begins, and it only gets worse. I head down to pick up the hammer I need, only to have a lady poke me in the shoulder and ask, "Where's the wrenches?" I say to her, I don't know, around here somewhere. The woman says, "Well, where around here?" I tell her, I don't know, probably the next aisle over. And with that, I turned and walked off, the lady not impressed by such action, it would seem. The Karen then says to me, "Well, aren't you going to show me? You have to show me." I say to her, "No, I don't. Find someone that actually works here. They can help you." Of course, I figured that was that, but the lady kept following me up front. I paid with my card, took the hammer, and start walking back through the store in the direction of the dock area. An area off limits to customers, I might add. The whole time, the lady kept following me and repeating over and over again, "You have to help me." And this quickly evolved into, "If you don't help me, I'm getting you fired." And that quickly evolved into, "I'll call the cops." Now, I didn't really care at this point. I just walked out to the dock and then went down to the track level. I overheard something of a commotion behind me and only caught some snippets of it. I assume that was a manager of some sort, explaining that I didn't work there, but honestly, I don't know. It took a good 15 minutes of banging away on the pin to finally get it to drop. That meant I was all set to go, right? Wrong. Turning to climb between the cars, I come face to shoe with a pair of police officers, looking down at me with some severe looks and a couple of employees watching me curiously. They looked ready to shoot me, smack me, or just put a good beat down on me, when one officer spoke and said, "Leave the hammer where it is and come up to explain what you're doing." I say to him, "I'm doing my job. I work for railroad name." The officer at this point, not sounding like he believed me, said, "Uh-huh. And what were you doing there?" I say to him, "Oh, it's a rusty coupling pin. I just had to hammer it back into place." The officer then says to me, "Well, we got a report about someone vandalizing or breaking railroad property." Now at this point, I point to the letters on my vest that spelled out the railroad's name and the belt control pack I was wearing, and then produce my company's identification. I even made the hornblatt for them with the belt control pack, and this seemed to satisfy the officers, who then turned and walked in the direction of where a couple of the employees were, and oh, the lady from before. Now I didn't hear what they said, but from the way the lady scuttled away, I got the impression that the officers put the fear of God in her. So yeah, that was my tale. A lady assumes that I work for the big box place and then realizes I don't. And in an effort to get some petty revenge on me, she calls the cops on me. It's not very effective. Oh my goodness, guys, silly Karens, right? Always resorting to calling the cops when they don't get what they want. Like, whatever happened to minding your own business and just finding another employee to help you, Karen? Like, seriously, some people have too much time on their hands. Here's some context. I work for a regional fast food chain, and where I live, they're literally everywhere. In fact, there's 2 in my hometown, not including the several in surrounding towns. I work at the restaurant that's second closest to my house, just because I prefer the management there, and the distance in travel from my house is like 3 minutes. After work, at the beginning of the week, I usually go grocery shopping. And the store I shop at is walking distance from the restaurant that I don't work at, which is important for later. So one night, I stop by the store to pick up some basic stuff. I have my earbuds in and I'm keeping to myself, although there's not that many people around that late at night to begin with. Also, an important thing to mention is that my earbuds are one of those wireless Bluetooth ones that hang around the neck, and people occasionally mistake me for being an employee, even when I'm not in uniform, as I'm always wearing a polo, baseball hat, and black slacks. And because my earbuds kind of look like the headsets that many retail supervisors wear. Anyways, as I'm grabbing some bread, a woman in what appeared to be her mid-30s taps me on my shoulder. I take an earbud out and give her a questioning look, slightly taken aback by the surprise contact. She asked me where she could find the goldfish crackers, and at the time, I hadn't realized that she thought I worked there. I just pointed towards the chip aisle and I went back to reaching for my bread without putting my earbud back in. A moment later, I can hear her clearing her throat in annoyance. I turn around and I can see her giving me a slightly disgusted look saying, "Hey, I thought you were going to show me." At this point, I'm just like, okay, that's rude, but whatever. I'll just show her and be done with it so I can hurry up and get home. So with that, I bring my shopping cart and I show her where the crackers are, before saying that I have to get going. Her face then twists up in anger and she gasps dramatically before saying, "How rude! You can't talk to customers like that." And this is when I make the connection that she probably thinks I work here. No surprise, as I said. I really do look like someone who works in retail. So I say to her, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't actually work here. I work at the fast food chain. Sorry for the misunderstanding." Hearing that, she cringes at me and she starts to get really antsy, responding with, "I know, but you're in uniform. You have to help me. It's your job to help customers." It's then I realize that this was no mistake. She knows I don't work here, but she doesn't care. I try to explain that even though I'm still in uniform, I'm off the clock. That I have a life and priorities outside of my job, and it's not my responsibility to babysit every customer on Earth, just the ones I'm paid to babysit. She then gets irritated and stomps her foot at me, grumbling, "Well, you're in uniform. That means you're representing a company, and you have to help me." I just shrug at her, saying, "I'm sorry, but I'm tired and I need to get home. Have a good night." As I'm walking towards the checkout, she follows me at my heels, sputtering how horrible I am and how I deserve to not only be fired, but also never be allowed to work near people ever again. I literally couldn't care less, so I just speed through self-checkout and leave. About an hour later, I get a phone call from one of my managers. When I pick up, I hear him cracking up, along with someone else talking in the background. The following conversation ensues. I say to him, "Yo, what's up?" My manager says, "Hey, did you just get into an argument with someone at the grocery store?" I say to him, kind of. Why? Did someone call?" My manager tells me, "Yes. Well, no, not us." He then tells me that Bob, the store manager at the other location, just called, saying that someone stormed into his restaurant and made a complaint about me. I say to him, "Really? How did they know it was about me?" Well, it turns out the crazy Karen took a picture of me as I was checking out to show the manager at the other restaurant. Luckily, he knows who I am, and I got a kick out of it. The woman didn't know that I worked at the other restaurant on the opposite side of town, and she thought she could get me fired by reporting me to some random night shift manager. Instead, she was informed that I don't work there either, and after she insisted he was lying to cover my ass, he told her to leave if she wasn't going to order anything. Obviously, I wasn't fired because I didn't do anything illegal or stupid, and I wasn't even on the clock. It's now a running joke, us teasing about being sassy to strangers when we're on break or going home. Oh man, guys, I know some people are dense when it comes to being able to tell the difference between a customer and an employee, but man, you've got to be next level entitled to assume that anyone who wears a uniform, even if it's not the store uniform, has to serve you because their job somewhere else is serving customers. I just wish someone took a picture of her and went to her job, give her a taste of her own medicine. So here's some context that'll be needed later. I've always been very tall, and I've had a mature vibe, so people often think that I'm older than I actually am. This story happened years ago, when I was only 12 years old. Also, I live in Argentina, in an area where theft, violence, harassment, etc. are things that 99% of people who live in the area will experience multiple times throughout their lifetime. The specific store I was going to was owned by a Chinese man, and all of his employees were his family members. I'm also Chinese, but I'm in no way related to this family. On this day, I was looking at some fruit while buying groceries for my grandma. The store was only a block away from my home, and the owners knew me and my family well, and it wasn't uncommon for her to give me money and send me there. I was busy grabbing the items on the shopping list when an intimidating man in his mid-30s touches my shoulder. And when I say intimidating, I mean it. The guy was tall, fully tattooed arms, and a mean "I'll chew your bones" look in his eyes. The guy says to me, "Excuse me, girl, do you know where so-and-so brand wine is?" I say to him, "No, sorry, but the wine and beer aisle is over there." I point towards it. And the guy says, "What? You expect me to search for it myself? Take me to it." I say to him, I'm sorry, sir, I just don't know where it is. My family doesn't drink." At that he says, "I didn't ask about your effing life story. You work here, so you should know this." I just reply, "Oh sir, I don't work here." The guy says, "What do you mean?" I say to him, "Look, I'm too young to work." At this point, I was just gonna tell this man how I'm simply a customer like him and go on my merry way, but he interrupts me and he grabs my shoulders and says, "Oh, so the little girl thinks that just because her daddy owns the store, that she doesn't have to do work here." Now the man was shouting at the top of his lungs, and if he wasn't heard before, by now everyone in the store has heard him. So I scream, "I do not work here." At this point, the man reaches out to swipe at me as I was pulling away, and then he gives me a smack in the face. I tried to get away, but since he was still holding one of my shoulders, I just tripped and fell. I was crying on the floor when the Chinese store owner, an average-sized man in his early 50s, and his oldest son shows up. The store owner runs over, shouting angrily in Cantonese. Meanwhile, the guy just turns around and faces him and says, "I don't understand Korean, you idiot." Meanwhile, the son is screaming at him to stay away from the girl. When the store owner got closer, the man hit him, and it quickly evolved into a brawl. Meanwhile, the son helped me stand up and rushed me back to the register where his mother was. The son said something to her in Cantonese and then ran into the back room, quickly coming out with a man who I recognized as his younger brother, the both of them armed with big pieces of wood. The three of them managed to beat the man into submission, and the police were called. After asking some questions and watching the security camera video, they arrested the guy. I overheard that the man was very drunk and high on drugs at the time. The owner's wife not only gave me everything on my grandma's shopping list for free, but she gave me a bag of candy for free, and she also followed me home and explained what happened. Later on, we learned from police that A, the guy had a shotgun and a pistol in his car's trunk, and B, that the police were already looking for him due to multiple robberies. From that day on, the owner's wife and the son started following any minors around the store to prevent something similar from happening. That could have gone horribly wrong, guys, if that family didn't come rushing out in time. It also sucks to hear that Opie lives in a place where crime and assault is such a regular thing. And I'm not gonna lie, guys, that beatdown the guy got was well deserved for smacking a 12-year-old around. So a few years back, I went to the States on a family holiday. And being from England, we wanted to see all the historical sites, so of course, we had to go to a Walmart. On the day, I made the mistake of wearing a navy top and some cool new khaki shorts I got. Now, I realized my uniform matching mistake as soon as I saw the checkout. We went around as a family, oohing and awing at how big the supercenter was, and seriously, they are giant compared to most big stores here. After a while, we split up to go and look at our separate interests. I, of course, being a video game nerd, found myself with the video games, seeing what was out over here. And after a while, I hear a rather stressed out "hello" coming from behind me. Now, I'm hard of hearing, so I don't always catch the first time that someone's speaking to me, if I can't see it. Believing that's what this was, I swung around, ready to say sorry and to explain. I turn around and the Karen says, "Thank you. Finally, you are so damn rude, you know that? Did your mother not teach you how to behave and treat customers?" I reply, "Oh, I'm sorry, I might not have heard you, I'm actually..." The woman interrupts me and says, "I don't care what your excuse is. I want these." The woman then shoves a list right into my stomach, causing me to drop the game I was holding and catch the list. I also had a bit of an upset tummy the last few days due to food differences on this holiday, so a push right there was not nice. I begin to tell the woman that I don't work here when she interrupts and says, "No more excuses from you. Now you listen here, I know nothing about video games and tech stuff like you kids do. So you are going to scamper away and get what's on this list for my son, and do your job, please." I say to the woman, I don't work here, and even if I did, I'm not fetching you items on your own shopping list, and I would execute my right to not have to serve you, as you're being a demeaning, self-righteous, rude, ignorant, and mean person. Do your own work." The woman wasn't having it though. She starts shouting even more at me, and at this point, I'm thinking, now it's my real time to shine. You see, for the past week, I've been shouted at and laughed at by my family, due to my stomach causing me gas. Loud, smelly gas. So I just took her paper, held it to my bottom, and let out the biggest, wettest fart, and then dropped the paper to the ground. And I'm not gonna lie, it felt good, especially seeing the lady bend down to pick the paper up after I left. The holiday was a really good one too. I'd say that was a mega win for OP. A vacation and a chance to put an entitled snobby Karen in her place. You know, a gross win, but a win nonetheless. And guys, if you've worked in retail, please let me know if this is something that sometimes happens. Like, I've read so many stories where Karens just hand employees lists and expect them to fetch everything on it for them. Like, do customers actually do that? I would love to know. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, it's in our /entitledpeople episode, where a smug, snobby Karen ignores OP's warning, thinking he can park anywhere he wants, and the guy learns an expensive lesson that he'll never forget. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.